So this is Izabela Vidovic, Elizabeta Vidovic, and Kathryn Michelle with Almost Normal Productions. And we are talking today with the wonderful Jenn Wexler. Hi, Jenn. Jenn is a fellow female filmmaker. She has directed and co-wrote a film called The Ranger, and then she's also produced several films, Most Beautiful Island and Depraved recently.
ABCs of Death.
Yeah, so fellow woman in horror, and being that we all have horror movies on our horizon, we're really excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, it's so cool that you guys are doing this and chatting with different female filmmakers.
Yeah, it's been something that we've really enjoyed in the past, and we want to bring it to everybody else because so many people want to connect, and so many people want to hear what other female filmmakers are doing. You know, other female filmmakers want to hear and it's just finding that forum. And so that's why we're doing it, because we want to hear from other female filmmakers, and we know other people want to hear. So
I want to hear it. I want to hear everything. I'm so excited to talk to other talented female filmmakers, especially women in horror, because there's only like a handful of us, right?
Growing bigger by the day, hopefully.
Yes, we're changing horror.
Yes,
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess that being said, like seeing that women are still, we're growing, but we're still underrepresented in the horror genre. I would be curious to know how you feel like women bring a unique perspective to horror.
Yeah, I think that we're in a really exciting moment right now because, of course, more women every day are discovering horror and also getting to step into the role of director, whether it's horror or another genre. But also that we're hearing from like people from all like traditionally marginalized backgrounds, and we've heard the same stories over and over again for 120 years since the beginning of film, from the white cis male perspective. And they say that, like, you know, there are no new stories and we're all retelling the same stories over and over again. But I don't really think that's true. I think that when you have people from different backgrounds, you get to look at these stories we might be accustomed to, but see them from new angles. And that like new voices get to bring like so much nuance we might have not even like known to be there before. So it's just thrilling. Like we're all so lucky that we get to be not only making movies, but watching movies like right now.
Absolutely. I agree. I mean, it's really exciting because I think now more than ever, we feel the same way. Now's the time. Like, it's a great time to be a female filmmaker, you know, in any genre, like you said, but especially in horror. And we're just having so much fun because we're seeing more and more female horror filmmakers, and it's really changing the genre in a lot of ways. It's like just really exciting to see all the imagination and all the beautiful work that's coming out of this genre. It's changing it. It really is. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And
I think
people attack, it's cool to see how people attack the different like subgenres of horror. You know, just because if you're female, if you're non-binary, whatever, like it doesn't mean that you have to only make these art house horror, you know, like the Babadook. You don't have to only make those kinds of movies. Like women and we should just be making like all kinds of movies, from like 80s schlock, you know, like we get to also make the worst of it too. Like there have been so many like, you know, like horror comedies or like bad horror comedies or whatever. Bad, I put that in quotes because all horror is awesome in its own way. And it's so exciting that we get to like explore every side of horror and all of its subgenres.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think like what you were saying too, with like whether you're non-binary or you're transgender woman, like just kind of seeing all types of representation on screen and seeing different like just the female gaze in all these different ways has been really cool. I think that's what's interesting about like the female voice emerging on the scene, and just offering so many different types of perspectives, even to slasher. Like a woman is going to make a slasher different than a man will. And I think that's really cool.
Or
Um,
or not. Maybe that woman wants to embrace some of the tropes that have
that's
been
true.
done before. Like,
Right. And then also like being surprised that it's like, oh, that's a female director. Like I wouldn't have guessed because it's unprecedented. And I think that's what's really unique about it.
I just saw this really, I don't know if you guys were watching Sundance movies, but I just saw this amazing doc at Sundance called Brainwashed by Nina Menkes. And it went through how like we're in a fishbowl and we don't even realize that the frames we see on screen, how for like 100 years we've been objectifying women just by being in the male subjective perspective and having the woman as the object. And when this doc is available, I encourage everybody to seek it out and watch it.
What is it called again?
Brainwashed. I'm definitely gonna check it out.
Yeah, that seems really cool. Well, also like just what I said, I was like, oh, like, you know, a woman is going to make a horror film different than a man. And you're like, also, but she may not. And you may not expect that because you're thought to believe that women can't make films in the same way that men can. But I also feel like there's an argument to be made that like, there's an argument to be made where like it's really cool that obviously men and women can make the same types of films, but there's also like such strength in men and women making different films, and like that doesn't have to be a bad thing. And I think it's just like recognizing that it just depends on the kind of filmmaker that you are, you know.
Absolutely. It doesn't have to be this. It doesn't even have to be a competition. Why?
No. I think it's just like we're all just making films and they can all be equally interesting and cool.
And you know, it goes back to what you were saying earlier, you know, all the stories that have already been told. I think it doesn't really matter what the subject is. Everyone is going to have their own unique perspective on it and their own unique take on it. You know, it's just.
I would love to send a question to you guys. I'm just curious after watching the Accursed and you know, in regarding what we're talking about in terms of perspective, you guys co-directed that, right? So can you just, because I've never co-directed anything, I'm just so curious what your guys' process was getting aligned with the same vision. How did you guys work together?
You know, it's so funny because you co-wrote The Ranger with your friend, and Betta and I co-wrote The Accursed. And we co-wrote pretty much all of our stuff out, and Bella has joined in with the writing process as well. But I think, you know, when you're co-writing, you know how I don't know what your process is. That was something that we were going to talk to you about a little bit as well. But we really flesh out the characters, we flesh out the story, we really dig in when we're our process when we're writing, we are constantly either on the phone or in person, and we're acting out these scenes because we started together as actors. So we come from a very emotionally driven, a very story driven kind of excitement, and we'll be getting into it. And we, you know, so by time we got to set, we really had this whole thing. Oh, are we having bad connection? Oh, there we go. We had really worked out a lot of the kinks that you would probably think that were going to happen on set. And we're really close, and we've worked together for about how many years now?
Almost 20.
So we know each other's strengths and we trust each other immensely. So when we're on set, we take two different places on the set. You know, one of us is behind camera, one of us is back in Video Village, or, you know, vice versa. And sometimes we'll sit next to each other, but it's very rare because we like to have, you know, ourselves stretched out. It's like having two separate, you know, extra hands, you know? So I don't know. I think it's always worked in our benefit to have both of us on set, you know, directing together versus like one of us. You know what I mean? It's just, we're kind of an extension of the other in a lot of ways. I don't know about it. Jump in. I'm just kind of.
You're right. Say that in one of the articles recently, like you'd be missing your right arm without Kathryn.
Yeah, pretty much. We're so used to working together for so many years and writing, and like, just like she said, I mean, she pretty much covered it. It was the most natural thing to do was to direct together. And the next feature too, we were talking about it, and we actually just had a conversation not long ago. I said, if we never direct anything again together, we have to exist together, because it's just not going to be the same film. We came up with the story together, we wrote it together, it's not a singular vision, if that makes sense. It's like, here, I'm saying this, but maybe one of us is going to end up directing it, and without the other, it's still going to be a good film, I promise. But so far, like when I look at it, when I look at the story, it would be very different. I think a very different film is if one of us was to direct it, because we created it together. And yeah, the set was kind of like a dance we're used to for 20 years.
Yeah, it is very much like a dance. I love that analogy. Jen, I mean, both of us have worked separate, but, we really enjoy each other. And I think the trust is, like we've always talked about, that the trust, in knowing that the other person has the exact same goal. Like, you set aside your ego. You just know that no matter what, our main goal is to make the best film possible. And so if you can really place focus on that, set aside your ego and just go from that place, it really works, and we do trust each other a lot. That's a big part of it. But yeah, we had this last film, we had so much fun. I'm always dipping into the art department, driving her crazy, but she secretly loves it.
In the moment,
I do.
You guys like split up, so one of you is talking to the actors and one of you is talking to the AD, or do you like do everything together?
We split up. It's so funny because we'll just kind of come together at lunch, and we'll have a lunch together really quick and recoup. And then when we're on set working, usually she's with the DP behind the camera and I'm at the Video Village, or we'll just switch, depends on what we feel like doing that day. But it's just easier that way. It doesn't get crowded, and then actors don't get confused, like who do I look at, who am I talking to?
Yeah, I can attest to that. Having been directed by the two of them, it's like one brain.
Well, we always have our earpieces in too, so we're constantly checking in that way. Like, do you see this? Do you see that? We're checking in with each other. It's not like we're like tied in, tethered in psychically, but we do have like technology helping us out as well, so that we can constantly.
Kathryn, I would like to think that there's a bit of a psychological like connection there, personally.
Maybe. Well.
And even with like checking things, I don't know how some of it ended up, in our frame. Some of the things, or we're like, oh, what just happened? How did that end up there with so many eyes on it? Yeah.
So but then what about, for you, Jen, like having co-written a script, was it similar? I know it's not like in a physical setting, but how was that for you?
Yeah, so the script originated, my co-writer Jocko and I went to school together, and it was his senior thesis script. And I just love the idea of these like punks that go up against this park ranger. So we graduated college. We all put our scripts into drawers because we had to get real jobs and we didn't know what to do with them. And then a couple years later, after I had been producing and working for this company, Last Eye Picks, and I wanted to direct my first feature, I remembered his script and I was like, yo, can you find that? And can we work on it together? And then from there, it was, I would like do a draft of it. I would send it to him. He would do a draft of it. He'd send it back to me. We'd meet, we'd go for coffee. We'd talk about the characters and stuff together. And it kind of just went back and forth. And then Jocko was only on set one day, but I think he had a great day that day. I think he had a lot of fun. But Jocko is very cool in, as being open to me coming in as the director and being open to the vision, the adjustments that I wanted to bring to the movie, and like giving me that director space. He was super collaborative and open and just a good partner throughout the whole thing.
That's awesome. How much of that, like when you wrote this and you're looking at the script, how much would you say like you stuck to it when you were directing? Were you pretty rigid with the script, or were you more like, this is just almost like an outline, let's play? There's so many different ways you can, go when you're on set. And I'm just curious, like, how much did you stick to the script? And how much did you allow like other departments and the actors to influence the story itself?
And also, Jen, before you jump in, I just want to let everybody know who's joining that we're talking with Jenn Wexler about her the script that she co-wrote and that she directed, The Ranger. just in case anybody's wondering.
Yeah, we stuck mostly to the script. In terms of like shooting the scenes and the dialogue and everything, there were times where, you know, the actors would improv. We would have those kinds of moments here and there. But in terms of like all the departments were working off the script, and also I had made a lookbook, and also obviously tons of meetings and conversations with all the departments. And it was pretty close. There's, you know, a couple things here and there, amazing discoveries, not to mention the fact that anytime you're making a movie, you are, you know, it goes from being on the page to becoming real in real life, and you're working with other collaborators and people are bringing ideas to it. Obviously you're deepening all the characters as you're working with the actors and discovering, you know, deeper motivation and discovering how that might affect something, you know, in the third act you weren't considering. But ultimately, you know, the version on the page, I think you could see the direct line to the movie that we made.
Yeah, no,
Probably
absolutely.
the same with The Accursed, I mean, I would say.
Yeah,
We were pretty close. I mean, you know, and I think the biggest change was in editing for us. You know, with, you know, I don't know how you felt like when in the editing process, but like when we got into editing, we were like, you know what, because it was so heavy on the supernatural, there were some things that were like, you know what, we think it would be better to keep certain things like maybe hidden so the imagination can like really help this part more than just showing it or this or that. So there were some changes. I think for us, our biggest changes were in the editing process. Wouldn't you say, you guys?
yeah, absolutely.
What about you? Feel the same way? Or?
Yeah, for us, we edited the movie. I showed it to some friends. They were like, great, but we're not quite getting the backstory. So we were doing pickups anyway to do like our boombox explosion and do some of these things we didn't want to do with the full crew there. So then we also had a day or two where we shot some more like flashback backstory stuff that we could sprinkle in to help the third act like really sing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's always important to budget in money to be able to do pickups, you know, because
super important.
It's a living process, and when you're editing, you're going to discover stuff, and you're going to discover how to heighten stuff. So you want to be able to do those pickups.
Yeah, Jen, we did, you know, that opening scene where the graveyard, she's getting buried. I'm not going to give too much away in case somebody hasn't seen it, but that was actually a pickup shot that we built a grave in our DP's garage.
That's amazing. Oh my God. That was such a great shot. I won't give it away either, but that was like an amazing shot. So that's a perfect example. I don't know if you mean that wasn't planned originally and it was a discovery that you guys found along the way, but that's that's like the defining shot, if I may say so, like of your movie. That's like what you think of when you think of the movie. So
yeah, no, it's so funny. It wasn't even scripted.
It wasn't scripted. Well, it was scripted in a different way, obviously, because we really wanted to have them dig a hole and like do a grave. We couldn't find it. So, and it's just Kathryn this is all Kathryn. She's like, oh, that's no big deal. We'll just do it in Austin's garage. I was like, okay. I wasn't even here. I was actually in Europe visiting family when she was just sending me pictures and videos. And she's like, how does this look?
That's how much she trusts me. See what I'm talking about?
Like, it looks phenomenal. You're awesome. Thank you.
No, we're literally like all on the beach, and Kathryn's sending us like grave photos, and she's like tossing dirt, and she's like, what does this look like? We're like, a little more dirt there.
Put some branches over here to make it a little more real. So yeah.
Honestly, that's like especially when you're making an indie film, that is like, there's so much joy sometimes in the pickups where you get to like recreate, you know, get your close up and specialty shots and recreate the moment. We have a lot of bubblegum balls that are in slow motion, like scattering across the floor, that we recreated because we didn't actually, there's, you know, a moment where with an axe, he hits a thing of bubblegum balls. And I just was thinking of it as my like shining elevator blood shot, but with bubblegum balls. And it was so fun to just like have the time away from principal, just with, you know, your DP or gaffer, where you can really like dive in and hone those shots specifically.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so
I think
much fun.
it's really important. You know, kind of along those lines, how have you always been drawn to horror?
Yes, since I was a
That's great.
when I was a kid, I used to watch Are You Afraid of the Dark? And I think that was the gateway drug. I was like 5. That was the gateway drug for me that made me really, I loved horror. And I was the kind of kid who would like make her friends go hang out in the graveyard after school. And,
I love that.
yeah. And as an adult, you know, to be working in horror, it's been a constant thing.
Yeah. So I feel like we've all three of us have definitely been drawn to the genre. I mean, not to say that like just because that's what you make that's all that you consume, but it's definitely like in our wheelhouse for sure, even like content wise, what we like, I would say.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. I mean, we wrote The Accursed and Exist, our next horror, and then we also have a third kind of crime thriller.
Mm-hmm.
So
it has a lot of horror elements to it. It's pretty gross and sometimes like in the best way possible.
And I think when you're writing and you're director or making a product like that, I mean, at least I really love to consume as much as possible. We've come up with some really great ideas. I mean, literally just go, oh my gosh, look at how they did that, and look at how they did that, and that looks great, and this looks great, and especially like The Accursed is a story that happens in one place. So it was kind of cool to research horror films that were done in one location, see how they did it. So it's not coming across claustrophobic and, you know, boring, for a lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to do what you guys do well is you have to, even if it's in one location, you have to keep changing it up. You know, you have to go outside, you have to change the lighting. Even if a really great movie, I think it's called Buried. It's from like 10 years ago with Ryan Reynolds or something in the coffin.
I remember that. Yeah.
It's so phenomenal. It's an hour and a half. You're in a coffin, but because they have figured out really smart ways to keep changing up the lighting and the vibe, you're consistently, you know, you don't get bored with it. And I think that's truly magical when you can figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really well done. I remember that.
Have you, if you haven't seen Musarañas, Shrew's Nest, it's a Spanish film. Mm-hmm. It's all in one location, one apartment. It was absolutely brilliant.
And they're like remaking it.
I think they're remaking it.
Are they remaking it?
Yeah.
Who's doing it?
I don't know. They're doing an American version of it. But I don't know which studio is behind it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one's great. But yeah, I mean, speaking of horror films, if you all have not checked out Jenn's The Ranger, you should. Jenn, what platforms is it available on now?
It is on Shudder for streaming, and I think you can also get it on like Amazon for transactional purchases.
Awesome. Yeah. So, and then what, like, can we ask like what films you've got coming up too?
There's things in the works that I can't quite talk about yet, but very excited to continue making more horror movies.
Perfect.
And where can people keep like get updates from what you're doing?
Oh, probably the best place is my Instagram, which is this and blood. And yeah, I'm on Twitter, which is J_Wex. And The Ranger has a bunch of social media sites as well. Just look for The Ranger movie.
Awesome. Well, it's been so great talking to you. And then we also had a question that he asked. 2 or 3 people asked where The Accursed is, so that's at the link in our bio. The Accursed on VOD. It's also on VOD platforms, so you can do like a double feature. Maybe of The Accursed and The Ranger. Very different.
Do it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jenn, for your time. It's been really great talking with you.
Thank you, Jenn.
Me.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank
you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.